Nothing made sense in the environment that I lived in the world I lived in. It was insanity.
On August 30th, 1994, Bobbi Parker, wife of the deputy warden at a prison in Oklahoma, says she somehow found herself in Texas with a convicted killer. Randolph Dial, serving a life sentence, had broken out of prison and escaped in the Parker van, and he took Bobbi with him. She says she's not sure how it happened, that he may have drugged her, and he had a knife.
I just remember at some point there was blood on me, blood on my arm and on my leg, and Dial wanted to get those covered. He took me to a store, bought a few items, and I was able to make a phone call.
Later, some would find it odd Bobbi called her mother, not her husband, at the prison. She says she was happy to be calling anyone.
Making a phone call to me was a good thing because I was hoping it could be traced.
Back in Granite, Bobbi's husband Randy was coming to terms with the fact that his wife was missing, and so was a convicted murderer.
It's just mind-numbing. Just get through the day and, make sure the girls are doing okay.
The Parker girls were 8 and 11.
I just told them the truth. She's missing. She's gone. They were devastated.
The community was devastated. Yellow ribbons, prayer vigils, and a huge manhunt ensued. Dial was on the FBI's most wanted list. Meanwhile, Bobbi says she was in a Texas motel at the mercy of Randolph Dial.
He bound my wrist, he bound my ankles, and he beat me with his belt. It was a very severe beating, very severe. What I remember him saying is, "This is nothing compared to what the people I know can and will do to you."
What did he say he would do if you tried to get away?
He would either find me or my family, and he would harm them, kill them.
By this time, they'd ditched her van. She says Dial, who claimed to have mob connections, managed to get a hold of some cash and a gun.
He put it to my head, and he said, "This is what happens if you don't cooperate." And I nodded. I wanted to get home.
Instead, they boarded a bus for Houston, where she says Dial locked her in an abandoned apartment, tied her up, and forced alcohol and drugs on her.
He has complete control over everything. Everything.
He's feeding you, bathing you,
Yeah, cleaning me.
having his way with you sexually when he wants,
By instrumentation, yes.
meaning
By objects. Rape by instrumentation. It is a violent act. It degrades you. It embarrasses you. Humiliates you. It messes with you mentally.
Days passed, then weeks, then months.
Time just ran together. I didn't know always what day of the week it was. It didn't matter.
8 months after Bobbi's disappearance, in April 1995, the federal building in Oklahoma City was bombed. The FBI focused its resources on that case. The hunt for Randolph Dial and Bobbi Parker, long since cold, was quietly backburnered.
Every time I'd hear of a body being found, I'd hold my breath and wait. But I just wouldn't accept she was dead.
By now, Bobbi and Dial were working on a small farm in East Texas, Dial calling himself Richard Deal and introducing Bobbi as his wife, Samantha.
To survive, I became Samantha.
And who was Samantha Deal?
She was lonely, hurt, and trying to make it day to day, minute to minute.
When you would approach another human being, did you want to just shout out, "I'm being held against my will? Get me out of here"?
Actually, I became fearful. If I did something that was not approved, the revenge of Dial was great.
Dial seemed ever more confident. In 1997, after 3 years on the lam, he started a pottery company called Terracotta Gardens.
Dow advertised it on the radio, did an interview on the radio.
Unbelievably, the attention led to an invitation for the fugitive killer to speak at a women's luncheon at a local country club.
Womankind are very near and dear to my heart.
Where were you while he was out front entertaining the ladies who lunch?
I was back at the trailer, tied up.
From there, Dial and Bobbi went to work on an industrial chicken farm owned by Deborah Grace. She never doubted they were married, but she could see Dial was abusive.
He was like, I can beat her, she's my wife, I can beat her. And I said, no, not on my farm, you're not. I tried to talk her into coming to the house and she wouldn't go. She just kept saying, no, 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 he wouldn't like that.
In 2000, Bobbi and Dial moved again to another, bigger chicken farm. Bobbi's daughters were teenagers now. She'd missed 5 anniversaries with Randy.
There were times that the loneliness was so great that my body would physically ache.
And she says Dial never ceased his campaign of terror, killing 2 of her dogs to punish her, one right before her eyes.
He shot the dog. Then he blamed me for it. It was maybe just a dog, but to me it was family.
Only once, says Bobbi, did she openly defy him. Dial, artist turned killer turned fugitive, had already been the subject of a true crime book. And one night he decided to phone the author, an ex-cop named Charles Sasser.
He says, for the last 7 years we've been making an honest living. We're living a happy country life.
We, Sasser figured, included Bobbi Parker, but he wanted proof that she was still alive.
And he said, of course she's still alive. Do you want to talk to her?
I was in bed sleeping, and he told me he was going to put me on the phone, and I said, I'm tired. I'm really tired. And reached back here for his gun, and I just put my hand up. I said, and he told me, just stick to the questions that he asked you.
But even with Dial right next to her, Bobbi says she dared to go off script. After all, Sasser was a former detective. This might be her chance.
I said, have you seen my children? I knew I'd probably be beat for it. But sometimes it's worth it. I thought he would say, would you like me to make a phone call to him? And he didn't.
Still, she says, the conversation filled her with hope.
I thought, the FBI will be here. Surely Charles Sasser will call him, and they'll be here.
Sasser did call the FBI, but he didn't know where Bobbi and Dial were. No one came. Bobbi says she was broken, resigned to her fate, and the years dragged on until one day in spring 2005, when her life took another wild turn.
Coming up, a rescue is in the works. Or was it a rescue at all? Deputies are about to discover something odd.
They picked up a lot of Valentine cards.
Valentine's?
When Dateline continues.